my parents asked the devil for a child, and I was born. My name is Kwame, and for 17 years, I believed I was just an ordinary boy living in the village of Adansi, nestled in the hills of Ghana. I had no idea that my very existence came from a pact made under the ancient Baobab tree, or that the price my parents paid would eventually come to collect. You see, when desperate people make deals with the old spirits that lurk in the shadows between worlds, the consequences don't just affect them. Sometimes, the innocent pay the highest price of all. This is the story of how I discovered the truth about my birth, why the animals fled whenever I grew angry, and what it really means to be claimed by darkness itself. But before I tell you about the night everything changed, you need to understand how it all began. My parents, Joseph and Amanda Asante, were once the most blessed couple in our village. Papa was the finest carpenter in 3 districts, and Mama was a gifted healer whose herbal medicines could cure ailments that baffled even the doctors in Kumasi. They had everything they wanted, except the one thing they desired most, a child. For 15 long years, they tried. Mama visited every medicine man, every prayer woman, every shrine keeper from the coast to the northern regions. Papa worked from dawn to dusk, crafting the most beautiful furniture to trade for expensive remedies and offerings to the ancestors. Nothing worked. I can only imagine their desperation as they watched other families grow, while their compound remained silent of children's voices. Mama would sit under our courtyard's mango tree, watching the neighbors' children play, tears flowing like the rainy season rivers. Papa would carve wood with increasing fury, as if he could shape their sorrow into something useful. But desperation makes people seek help in the dangerous places. And in the forest, beyond our village, there stood something that had been calling to desperate souls for centuries: the Ancestor's Baobab. Every village has its forbidden places, and the Ancestor's Baobab was ours. A massive tree, so old that our great-great-grandparents spoke of it in whispers. Its trunk was wide enough to hold a small house, and its roots went so deep that people said they touched the underworld itself. Children were warned never to approach it alone. Adults would take the long path around the forest rather than pass too close to its shadow, because everyone knew when you were desperate enough to seek the Ancestor's Baobab at midnight, you weren't calling on your family's spirits anymore. And on a moonless night during the Harmattan season, my parents went to that ancient tree with blood on their palms and desperation in their hearts. When they reached the Ancestor's Baobab, the very air changed. The usual sounds of the forest, crickets, night birds, rustling leaves, fell silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. According to the diary Mama kept hidden in her medicine chest, which I would discover years later, this is what happened. They knelt between the massive roots of the tree. Papa cut his palm with his carving knife, then Mama's. Their blood dripped onto the ancient wood, and immediately the tree began to pulse like a heartbeat. The words came to Mama's lips in a language she didn't recognize, as if an ancestral spirit was speaking through her. Great One who dwells in shadow, grant us the child we desire above all earthly things. But what answered was no ancestor of ours. A presence emerged from the hollow of the tree, not seen but felt, a darkness so complete it seemed to swallow the moonlight itself. When it spoke, the voice came from everywhere at once. The rustling leaves, the creaking branches, the very ground beneath their feet. A child you seek? a child you shall receive. But understand this, mortals. Every gift demands payment, and every debt will be collected. In 17 years and 1 day, what is mine by ancient right shall return to me. My parents, blinded by their desperate longing, agreed without truly understanding what they promised. The pact was sealed with blood and witnessed by the old spirits that dwell in darkness. 9 months later, during the worst storm anyone could remember, I was born. For 16 years, I seemed like any other village boy. Well, mostly. There were always small signs. Animals behaved strangely around me. Chickens would refuse to come near me. But when they did, they laid twice as many eggs. The yam plants in our family's farm grew larger wherever I walked. But they also attracted insects that shouldn't exist in our region. And when I got truly angry, things withered. Plants would curl up and die. Milk would sour instantly. Once, when I was 12 and furious about a broken toy, every flowering tree in our compound dropped its blossoms in a single day. My parents always found explanations. Bad season, they'd say. Strange weather. The spirits are restless. But I caught them burning extra incense and making more offerings than usual. I saw Mama consulting her divination bones more frequently, always with worry creasing her brow. The dreams started when I turned 15. Dark dreams of places that existed beneath the earth, of caverns filled with whispers in languages older than humanity. In these dreams, something called to me with a voice that felt like home, even though it terrified me. Soon, my son, soon you will understand your true nature. I began seeing things others couldn't, shadows that moved independently of their owners, glimpses of spirits walking among the living. I'd look at our village mosque and see it crumbling. I'd look at the forest and see creatures with too many eyes, watching from between the trees. But the real changes began as my 17th birthday approached. My reflection in still water started looking different. Sometimes my eyes held flecks of red that shouldn't be there. Sometimes, in the light of our oil lamps, my shadow fell in directions that defied the flame. Others began to notice. The imam started finding reasons to avoid blessing me after prayers. Small children would stare and tell their mothers I smelled like old earth, even after I'd just bathed. But it was Elder Nana Akoto who finally voiced what everyone was thinking. She pulled Papa aside after market day and spoke in the Twi that older people use when they want to be understood clearly. Joseph, I knew your father and his father before him. Good bloodlines, honest people. But that boy of yours carries something that didn't come from your family tree. Mark my words. Whatever bargain brought him to you, payment is coming due soon. Nana Akoto was right. Payment was coming due, and it arrived exactly 17 years and 1 day after I was born. My 17th birthday fell on the same moonless night my parents had visited the Ancestor's Baobab. And just like that night, 17 years ago, the Harmattan wind carried more than dust. All day, I felt wrong, restless, like army ants were crawling under my skin. Even our neighbor's usually fearless rooster refused to crow when I walked past. That evening, as we sat down for my birthday meal of jollof rice and goat stew, Mama could barely hold her spoon steady. Papa kept glancing toward the door, as if expecting an unwelcome visitor. They knew. They'd counted every day for 17 years, knowing this moment would come. That's when it started. A gentle tapping on our compound's gate. 3 soft knocks, perfectly timed. But when Papa opened the gate, no one was there. Just the empty path leading to the village center and the sound of the wind through the palm trees. The knocking came again, this time at our back door. Again, nothing but shadows and the rustle of dried leaves. Then it moved to our windows, all around the house, that same 3-knock pattern, circling us like a predator. But every time we looked, we saw only darkness staring back at us. That's when Mama broke. She fell to her knees on our woven mat, sobbing, and 17 years of hidden truth came pouring out like water from a broken calabash. "Forgive us," she cried in Twi. "Ancestors, forgive us. We're so sorry. We wanted a child so desperately. We didn't understand what we were trading away." Papa knelt beside her, his carpenter's hands shaking. "We went to the old tree, son. We made a bargain with something that wasn't human, wasn't ancestor, wasn't anything of light. We gave you life, but it came with a price we never truly understood." As their words sank in, something inside me awakened. All those years of strange incidents, of plants dying when I was angry, of feeling like I didn't quite belong. It all made terrible sense. I wasn't their child in the way that mattered to the spirit world. I was a debt made flesh, a promise walking on 2 legs. And now, 17 years later, the creditor had come to collect. The knocking stopped. Our compound fell silent except for Mama's weeping. And then, in that awful quiet, we heard it speaking from the darkness beyond our walls. "The time has come, child of shadow. Come home to where you truly belong." In that moment, looking at my parents' faces, wet with tears and fear, I felt something I hadn't expected. Pure, unconditional love. Despite everything, the lies, the supernatural bargain, the dark origin of my existence, these people had raised me. They had fed me fufu with their own hands, carried me on their backs when I was small, taught me to carve wood and identify healing plants, and loved me as completely as any parents could love a child. Joseph and Amanda Asante might not have created me in the natural way, but they were the only parents I'd ever known. And I wasn't going to let some ancient debt collector tear our family apart. I helped Mama to her feet and looked both of them directly in the eyes. "I don't care what spirit claims ownership of me," I said in the strongest voice I could manage. "I choose who I am. I choose this family. And I choose to fight for what matters." That's when I understood something crucial. The voice calling to me from the darkness could threaten and demand, but it couldn't simply drag me away against my will. I had to choose to go. Whatever dark power had created me had also given me something precious, the ability to decide my own fate. And free will meant the power to refuse, even when the consequences might be deadly. For the first time since the knocking began, Papa straightened his shoulders and looked me in the eye with pride instead of fear. "That's my son," he said firmly. "Spirit-born or not, you're an Asante, and Asantes don't surrender without a fight." Mama wiped her tears and took both our hands in hers. "Then we face this together, as a family bound by love, not just by blood, but just as we found courage in our unity, the real test was about to begin." The ground beneath our compound began to tremble, not from earth movement, but from something far more powerful pressing up from below. The walls of our house creaked, as reality itself seemed to bend around us. Shadows moved in ways that defied the light from our oil lamps. The darkness between the rafters grew deeper, and from that unnatural black, shapes began to emerge. First came the whispers, dozens of voices speaking in languages that predated humanity. They spoke my name, but not the name my parents gave me. They spoke older names, titles that made my soul shiver with recognition. The temperature in our home dropped so quickly that our breath became visible. Mama's medicinal herbs, hanging in bundles from the ceiling, withered and crumbled to dust in seconds. And then, from the darkness that had gathered in our main room, it stepped forward. The thing that had answered my parents' desperate prayer 17 years ago. It didn't have a fixed form. Sometimes it looked like a tall man dressed in the skins of animals that had gone extinct before humans learned to speak. Sometimes it was shadow-given substance with eyes like dying stars. But always, it radiated the kind of cold that goes deeper than skin, deeper than bone. When it spoke, its voice came from inside our heads, as well as from the air around us. You have grown strong, child of my covenant. Your parents kept their word, though they never understood its true meaning. Now, you will understand yours. I felt its pull then, not physical, but something that called to parts of me I'd never known existed, parts that belonged to darkness and ancient hungers. You were never meant for this small life, it continued. You are my heir, my chosen, my bridge between the world of flesh and the realm of eternal shadow. Come with me and claim the power that is your birthright. For a moment, just a moment, I was tempted. I could feel the strength it offered, the knowledge, the ability to shape reality according to my will. But then I looked at my parents, clutching each other and trying to shield me with their mortal bodies from something that could snuff out their lives with a thought, and I knew what I had to do. No, I said, and my voice rang with power I didn't know I possessed. The shadow thing paused, surprised. No, I refuse your claim, I declared. I choose my family, my village, my human life. Find another heir. What happened next changed everything. The creature didn't rage or threaten. Instead, it smiled, and that smile was more terrifying than any anger could have been. Interesting, it said slowly. No one has ever refused me before. Very well, child of two worlds. Keep your mortal life, for now. It began to fade back into the darkness from which it had come, but its final words froze my blood. But understand this, you cannot escape what you are. The power in your blood will grow stronger with each passing day. And when you finally embrace your true nature, when you realize that humanity will always fear and reject you for what you are, you will come to me willingly. The door between worlds remains open. Your 17th year has awakened abilities you cannot suppress. Soon, you will understand why mortals call children like you cursed. As it vanished completely, normal warmth and light returned to our home. Mama and Papa held me close, all of us shaking from what we had witnessed. But I could already feel the changes beginning. My senses were sharper. I could hear conversations happening 3 compounds away. I could smell fear on people from across the village square. Most troubling of all, I could sense the spiritual realm overlapping with our physical world. And in that realm, things had taken notice of me. Over the following days, strange events began occurring throughout our village. Crops failed in perfect circles. Wells that had never run dry suddenly went empty. Children reported seeing the shadow boy in their nightmares. They were talking about me. The creature had been right about one thing. I was changing, whether I wanted to or not. And as my 17th year progressed, I would have to decide, fight against my supernatural heritage and risk destroying everything I loved, or learn to control these dark gifts before they controlled me. But that That is a story for another time, because what I discovered about my true nature and the price my village would pay for my choice to remain human, that's when the real horror began.